Welcome to Globewatch with me, Charles Abune. Plus 66 million people across the world today are refugees at a time when climate change is becoming more and more an issue which needs urgency across the world. You can add inclusive economic growth to maximize the rate of inequalities in the world today. Those are some of the key troubles facing our planet today. And here at the Paris Peace Conference, solutions are being sought to end all such troubles. One of the key personalities who has gone through the threshold of human history in the past century is my guest today. He was a former UN Special Envoy for Syria, former Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, a former Foreign Affairs Minister of Algeria, the North African country, so proud of its petroleum resources, as well as being a lecturer at Sciences Po. Today, he is equally one of the elders, a group of solution-minded individuals created by former South African President Nelson Mandela. Lakhdar Brahimi joins me as guest. Lakhdar Brahimi, thank you very much indeed for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much.
We are here in Paris where we are standing. President Putin, President Emmanuel Macron, Chancellor Angela Merkel, all passed to come and talk about peace.
Sure.
Can you define to me the world in which we are living today?
Well, that's a little bit difficult to do in 1 minute, but I think the world we're in has made a lot of progress in many ways. People are living better, there is less poverty, but there is no peace yet in the world. We cannot be satisfied about the fact that there are lots of threats, lots of fears inside countries and between countries. And I think the initiative of the French president to organize this forum is welcome. We will see how much progress we can achieve here, and I'm sure that a lot of ideas will be born out of this meeting.
Absolutely. The Paris Peace Forum is just one of the many initiatives and events to mark the centenary anniversary of the end of World War I.
Exactly.
What lesson of peace does the First World War teach us today for a peace crusader like you?
I think that to remember the millions of people who have been slaughtered in the First World War is useful to see if, to help the efforts that are being deployed everywhere and by a lot of people to ensure that this experience does not repeat itself. We don't want another First World War. We don't want another Second World War. We want, as a matter of fact, to stop all the wars that are taking place now, especially on our continent, the African continent. So this is a reminder of what war does to communities, to countries, to continents. And from that point of view, this celebration is welcome. This forum is welcome.
You worked with Nelson Mandela to an extent at the Elders.
Sure.
You worked with late Kofi Annan.
Sure.
You sat on the same board at the UN to solve many problems facing our world today. Sure. What has been your personal input to ensure a better, peaceful and secured world?
I'm just one person, and what we have done in South Africa, for example, to begin with, ending apartheid was a huge contribution by Mandela, but Mandela himself says that this has been done thanks to the support of the world, to the struggle of Mandela and the ANC and the people of South Africa against apartheid. And then South Africa is now trying to contribute to ensuring more peace in the world. But as a person, we just are part of the effort of the United Nations and of other organizations in trying to ensure peace. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't.
Sure, sometimes we succeed to establish peace in the world, like the UN succeeded somehow in Kosovo and other parts of the world.
Yeah, in many parts of the
including Africa, ending apartheid, like you just indicated. And one of the areas where peace is greatly threatened today are in countries like Yemen and Syria, where you were the second UN Special Envoy to end the Syrian conflict after the resignation of late Kofi Annan, and you equally resigned, and the job was taken over by Staffan de Mistura. When the best brains of the world like you step down to provide a peace solution to a country like Syria, who will end that war?
You say, I don't think it's Kofi Annan or I or Staffan de Mistura, who, by the way, has also resigned and is going to be succeeded by a Norwegian, very able diplomat. It's not an individual who ends a war. It is, the individual is a catalyst for other forces to work together and stop the forces that want to continue the war. It's the war in Lebanon, civil war in Lebanon lasted 15 years. In Syria, it is 7 years now. Yemen, it's only 3 or 4 years now.
It's 7 years now. In Syria,
Yemen,
Syria.
Syria, it's 7 years.
Yeah,
yeah sure. It is circumstances and the work of people inside and outside that will make peace possible.
You are a very renowned diplomat, former Minister of Foreign Affairs for your country, worked at the United Nations at the highest level, has taken personal initiatives to contribute to peace in the world. What has been a lesson you have learned for peace in conflict-stricken African countries? What is that particular lesson you have learned in your world of negotiations, Lakhdar Brahimi?
I think we have learned quite a few lessons, and that is that to work for peace you have got to be very patient. Peace is done by the people themselves. You just help them. You don't come with magical formulas.
Absolutely.
You just try and help the people solve their problem and understand that continuing a war is not in their interest. You start a war because you think that war will end up bringing benefits to you, and ultimately you realize that war seldom brings benefit.
Let us separate with this. You have 66 million people in the world today as refugees.
60 million, yeah.
60 million. Those are UN agency statistics.
Yeah.
When you look at a continent like Africa, where there is remarkable progress today in terms of economic development, you can take cases like Rwanda, Djibouti and others, South Africa, Nigeria, progress is everywhere. What message do you have to your African community?
I think that the message is work together, help one another, stop these tensions that exist within countries and between countries. And also, we are part of the world. We are not, Africa is not alone in the world.
Absolutely.
Work with the rest of the world. Work with the rest of the world and work with one another. I think the African Union is a good organization. Let's make it strong and effective.
Lakhdar
right.
Brahimi, former UN Special Envoy for Syria, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very
Thank
much
you.
indeed
Yeah. All
for
right.
talking to Globewatch on Cameroonian television.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome, sir.
Okay. Goodbye.
And after talking to Lakhdar Brahimi, I equally sought to know more of how we can live peacefully across the world today from the former Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, who works with one of the most powerful think tanks in the world today and was part of some of the most historic agreements concluded in the past few years, including the Paris Peace Agreement or the Agreement on Climate. Kevin Rudd, thank you very much indeed for talking to the Cameroon Radio Television. You are here in Paris for the centenary anniversary of World War I and to attend the Paris Peace Forum. What memories do you have of World War I in particular, and how should the world be constructed for a better peace?
Well, I wasn't around for World War I, and neither were you, my friend.
Okay.
But our historiography is important. What is missing in Western historiography is how the Western powers in World War I used and abused colonial people, whether it was in Asia or whether it was in Africa. You saw millions of people from the continent of Africa, but also from Asia, from India, from China, from elsewhere, thrown into the slaughterhouse of Europe. What I find strange is that when you look at the commemoration of this 100 years on, there is insufficient reflection of the impact on peoples beyond Europe. First point. Second is, for the future, I believe that the enduring message of World War I is not just the human carnage of 20 million people, it's the failure of politics and diplomacy to prevent an entirely preventable war. That's the message for the future.
Okay. And is multilateralism the best solution to the world? President Macron's nationalism?
Multilateralism is the most desired form of global governance. And multilateralism is made possible by individual national governments making the multilateral system work. That's where France's voice is so important. France can go so far nationally, but it must also make the machinery of global governance work effectively through its national support. So in Macron's general global appeal for people to arise and rise above their national tribes, it's a message for all of us.
Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, the organization of the Paris Peace Forum was an issue of partnership with several organizations being involved. The French Development Agency, AXA, the insurance company, as well as many other multilateral institutions, La Francophonie and the French government in particular. And we equally had the chance to talk to one of the key partners of the organization, the Mo Ibrahim Foundation.
Foundation is one of the 7 founders of this who have been involved from day one. We think it's important at a time when globalization is in question, when liberal democracy is in retreat, when we see global institutions are under attack. It is very important for us to come together and to try to emphasize that we really are one human race, and we cannot address global warming individually. I mean, we don't have like a Paris climate, which is different from New York climate, different from Cameroon climate. It's a world climate. Well, we have to deal with it together. How we trade with each other, how to work with each other, etc. A lot of issues really we need to sit together and talk about. So it is an emphasizing globalization and the fact we are really connected. You know, something goes wrong in Africa, Europe is affected.
Right.
People understand, they need to understand this. So Europe has an interest of what's going in Africa. Africa has an interest of what's going on in Europe. So in that context, we think this is a very important forum, and I hope it managed to build momentum and to go from strength to strength.
And even turn into an annual event?
It should be. The plan,
Yeah.
it will be an annual event to really bring people together from all over the world.
Right.
And to have an open and free discussion.
Right.
And that's really important. And it up the ends for civil society to really come and play a more role in all our issues here. It is the future of our children. We all need to be concerned citizens.
So what's different about this event, say, compared to the UN General Assembly, is that you've got such a strong presence of youth and civil society organizations? Is that the key difference?
The UN General Assembly is an assembly of countries, actually. It is the heads of the state who go there, and these are governments. I'm not sure, are they talking to each other or they're talking at each other?
Right, right.
This is a different, completely different setup. At the core of it is civil society, it's not heads of state.
Yeah.
And you can see we have the different labs, different projects. We have this interaction between all the people. So this is really mainly civil society coming together and removing barriers and trying to work global solutions. It's totally different from UN.
Right.
Well, actually, we are two issues here.
Yeah.
Multilateralism, of course, is important.
Yeah.
We don't want to see more wars, world wars, etc. The horrors of all. The problem is this generation have no idea and what war means.
Right.
And that is really a problem. So the problem with the international governance system and multilateralism is that it was set in place really, and particularly after the Second World War. We had the Britain institutions, etc. Things have changed since then.
Right.
And the problem that all these organizations have not evolved with time to reflect the changes in the world around us.
Right.
That was the world of the victors in 1946.
Yeah.
It is the world of the victors of the war. So you look at the Security Council, you see it is the winners of the war. Now, 70, 80 years later, that is not relevant or applicable anymore. And that system should have evolved.
Right.
So there is a problem that is not evolving because the countries who benefited from the construct after the war, of course, reluctant to change.
Sure.
You can see Germany is not in Security Council.
Yeah.
Germany has more population, bigger economy than France or Germany or UK.
Yeah.
India is out. India is overtaking UK now in economy. It has much more population. Why is it out of Security Council? So the same
And
application
Africa's
to the World
not
Bank.
represented, so-
Africa is not represented, of course, not there, of course. And the World Bank, how it is controlled or how. So the lack of progress we're making here is really hustling the delegitimization of all these world institutions. And our friends need really to pay attention to this, and instead of hanging on to their privileges, they need really to reform the United Nations, the World Bank, the institutions. All this need reform. And we don't reform, it's going to collapse. You see the Chinese now did their own development bank, and more people are going to move around, do their own thing, and we're going to lose all this. So it's wise for us to evolve the system to meet the requirement of the age, other than destroying what we have and then we end up with nothing. They obviously focus on Asia and what they're trying to do, and there's no harm with that. I mean, Britain is part of it, Germany is part of it. I mean, it's fine, it can be an addition. So we can accept all that, come together, but we can all improve the governance of all these institutions. And we need to understand, we need to really work together Otherwise, we are all in trouble. I'm not sure the game of playing people against Asia is either ethical or beneficial for anybody. I would like to see an orderly world where all, subscribe to better ethics and better governance, the way we deal with each other, fighting corruptions. I would like to see projects in Africa executed with complete transparency, whether they are Chinese projects or American or European projects. So we hope to move to that, and instead of trying to play the game of various camps co-opting their clients. That's not in anybody's interest. We should not be really vassal states, playing to the whims of various strong men here or there. The benefit of the windfall Africa reaped out of the bonanza and commodity trade, etc., or other resources, really benefit few people. It did not benefit the majority of people. That windfall was not really used wisely for investment for the future, because that's what creates jobs, create economic activity, etc. So we see it as a lost opportunity, and I hope it is a lesson we learn from. We need to invest for the future. And I was in Norway a few days ago at a conference about Africa and Norway by the Business Association, and I look at the Norwegian model, where people use the resources to really create one of the most formidable wealth fund ever created for the state. Something close to $1 trillion for 5 million people. This is like $200,000 per every man, woman, and child. Right. Look at the safety net created by the wealth in that country, and this is the kind of models we need to really look into and see how we can replicate that in Africa, instead of wasting whatever windfall we get or surplus we get in white elephants, or sometimes it's just stolen. Cybersecurity maybe is not at the moment at the top of the African agenda, because we are not that developed society yet, but clearly it is there in Europe and the United States. And frankly, I think it's a real threat. And one of the major problems here is the reluctance of governments and business to cooperate, because everybody is pursuing their own personal interests. And if you can develop a formidable virus to infect the Chinese electricity grids, you want to keep it in your pocket because you don't know what's going to happen there. And if you develop something, you want to attack the Iranian nuclear reactor, and everybody's doing this. And the tragedy is that they manage also to lose these weapons. They weaponize the internet, and then they manage to lose it. Some of the most deadly weapons were stolen from the American security departments. And the attack on National Health Service in UK was, executed using some of this stolen stuff. So we feel vulnerable. And it's exactly here where we can see when globalization doesn't work, you see what kind of trouble we are. Countries refuse to cooperate on this.
We saw that here.
They refuse to cooperate. And companies only can see profits and dollar signs in their eyes. So it is, it's a problem. And it is a field day for gangsters. And look, some experts tell me there is not a single bank in the Western world which has not been compromised. There's not a large company which has not been compromised. You and I don't hear about it because keep quiet. Many of them pay the ransom and keep quiet.
And it is on that note that we conclude today's edition of Globewatch, aired from Paris, France, and more precisely inside the auditorium of La Grande Hall de la Villette at the 19th arrondissement here in Paris, France. And on behalf of the entire production crew, it's goodbye from all of us.